King Osantrix giants, war in Vilkinaland, and Vidga's fate have been subject of the last episode of the Thidrekssaga, here on Sagenheim. So today, onwards to something new from days of old. One time, Isung, the chief minstrel, came north to Attila from King Didrik in Bern. He had offered to spy and find out whether Vidga was alive, because minstrels can travel at peace between chieftains, where other men could not because of mistrust. And King Attila welcomed him warmly. He joined other men and entertained the whole evening. Vildifer spoke with the minstrel Isung and told him his intention, that he would not return to Bern until he found Vidga, either dead or alive. I wish you to arrange things with your tricks and devices, that I can come into Osantrix's court, so that no one will recognize me, if you wish what I wish. And Isung agreed to this quickly, and the next morning he told him to get ready. As soon as day came the next morning, Vildifer went before King Attila and said that he would go to his family lands in Hunaland, and then later back to him. Attila asked him to decide for himself, and asked if he wished to have his knights with him or to ride alone. And Vildifer said that Isung, the chief minstrel, would go with him, and that he did not want any more men, because they would be passing through peaceful lands, and they would find friends and kinsmen who were known. And King Attila gave him leave to go. They left the town of Susa together, and when they were away from the other men, Vildifer took the skin of the bear and showed it to Isung, and asked if that might serve them in some sort of trick. And the minstrel Isung looked at the skin and turned it in all directions, and he said that it might be useful to them if they were lucky. Isung now told him to get into the skin, and he did so, putting the skin on over his byrnie. And Isung now took a needle and thread and sewed it fast along his body and legs. With skill and art, he made it so that Vildifer seemed to every man who saw him to be a bear, and Vildifer acted just like a bear. Isung put a collar on him and led him along behind him. They traveled thus one day after another, until they came into Vilkinaland. When they were a short distance from Osantrix's castle, they met a man, and Isung asked him the news and where they were. Isung asked him where he had come from, and he said that he had come from the castle where King Osantrix was staying. And Isung asked if the king were at home, and whether he had his men with him. The man said that he was certainly at home, and now there are few men with him, because they have recently come from an expedition, as you must have heard, and most of his knights have gone to their homes, those who had any, because it was expensive to remain in town. And Isung asked how the king felt about his victory he had gained in this expedition. And he said that the king said little about it, but that other men said that he had lost more than he had won, except that he had captured one of the warriors of Didrik of Bern, and he wouldn't have captured him if it had not been for his nephew Heathen. Isung asked if his kinsman Heathen was there in the castle. He also asked who the warrior was they had captured and whether he was still alive. He said that Heathen was not there. He has gone to his own castle and dwelling. The man who was captured is named Vidga, and he is in the dungeon in heavy shackles. I expect that he awaits there his last day with many great tortures. Isung said it was to be expected that he would keep him closely guarded, and he said that the king would not profit if he were to get loose, and he and the man bade each other farewell, and they parted. Isung went to the castle, and he immediately went inside and before the king himself. The famous minstrel was welcomed warmly, and King Osantrix asked what this famous player could perform that made him more famous than other minstrels. And Isung answered, "I expect, sir, that there are few men who perform here in Hunaland who are able to do more or better than I. I can recite, play the harp, play the viol, or fiddle, and all kinds of stringed instruments." The king had a harp brought to him, and he played it. The king and the others said that they had never heard it played better. And as he played the harp, the bear danced and hopped along to the music. Isung had given the bear a name, calling him Visleo, and everyone thought it a wonder how well and courteously the bear performed, and how well trained it was. Isung entertained the king that evening well, and courteously with his bear. He was trained so that he would let no one near him except Isung. He would claw and tear at anyone else who came near him. And the king spoke, "This bear is well trained. Can he do anything else besides what you have said and what we have seen?" And Isung replied, "As far and wide as I have traveled in the world, I have never found a greater treasure than my bear. He can play and dance so well that few men can do as well." Isung then went to sleep for the night, and the next morning King Osantrix bade Isung entertain him further with his bear. And Isung said that he could scarcely deny him. "But it seems ill to me to offer you a show with my bear if you wish to test him so much." And the king said that he wanted to test him first by turning his hunting dogs loose on him, and to see how brave the bear was. And Isung answered, "You ask ill of my bear, king, because I would lose my bear since he would be killed. I wouldn't take all the gold and silver you own for that. If it turns out that you lose your dogs before my bear, then you will become angry, and your men will kill my bear. It seems most likely to me that my bear will defend himself and will not give up immediately." And the king spoke, "You will not deny me this. I am ready to sacrifice my dogs to the bear, and I promise that neither I nor my men will harm your bear." And Isung agreed to do what the king asked. Both on that day and on the evening before, they had heard that Vidga was laying in the dungeon with strong shackles on his feet and on his neck. The next morning, the king and all the men who were in attendance went out of his castle to a fair meadow. And Vidolf Mittumstangi was there in strong irons, because he could not be set free except in battle. It seemed to them that there was no expectation of hostilities, and the giant Aventhrod, his brother, led him, and they were both unarmed, as were all of the king's men. The women and the servants also left the castle, along with all the children who were there to see the entertainment that was supposed to take place. Vidga heard now that his friend Isung had come, and he suspected that he wanted to free him with some trick, and with the help of King Thidrek or some of his comrades. Vidga now broke his shackles open. They loosed 60 large dogs at the bear, and they ran at him, all at the same time. The bear took the largest dog and held his front feet together with his back feet, and killed 12 of the best dogs with it. The king now became angry that the dogs were being killed, and he leapt at the bear with his sword drawn, and struck down at the shoulders. The sword cut the skin, but it stopped at the bear knee. He went away and moved back towards his men, but Vildifer grasped his sword and loosed himself from Isung's hand and ran after the king. He cut off his head and then sprang to Aventhrod and killed him. Next he went to Vidolf Mittumstangi and killed him. And thus King Osantrix lost his life, along with 2 of his giants, whom he had trusted for protection, as long as they all had lived together. And now all of the king's men, who had been standing there, ran away, and they were all alarmed and frightened because of the king's fall. They thought that the fiend himself had gotten into that bear, because his behavior was so extreme, and most of them were unable to speak. Vildifer ran up to the castle and called out and asked where his good friend Vidga was. But Vidga had already broken out of the dungeon, and they stood there together and killed 16 men. Now they did not lack good weapons or good horses, and they recognized Vidga's horse Scamming and all of his weapons except for his sword Mimung. He did not find it, and it seemed very bad to him. Vildifer ripped his way out of the bearskin and showed himself and revealed who he was. The men of the castle saw that he was a man and not a troll as they had thought. They found that he had killed their chieftain with a great deception, and some of them went after weapons to avenge him. Vidga, Vildifer, and the minstrel Isung leapt onto horses, for they did not want to wait for any more ill treatment. And they thought they had accomplished their mission well, which was true. And after taking as much gold and silver and good treasure as they could, they rode out of the castle. They rode out of the country as fast as they could, until they arrived in Hunaland at the court of King Attila. The king welcomed Vidga and his comrades very warmly. He acted as if Vidga had returned from Hel, and he asked how he had escaped from King Osantrix. And Vidga told him about their journey and about the death of King Osantrix. King Attila spoke. "It is certainly true, King Thidrek, that you are a good chieftain and a man of great valor, and you have great treasures in men who are willing to lay down their lives for one another, or for your honor, or to rescue someone from difficulties, like those you were just in, good friend. And this should certainly be repaid. Your achievement of few hands is worthy of reward, for you have bought me peace, if I can now preserve it myself. It is true, King Osantrix, that you have had a miserable fate. It would certainly have been better if you had sought a settlement. Less dishonor and shame would have then come from our being related. But now you provide us both with much discomfort, and you have gained much injury. It would have been much better for both of us if we had settled earlier. Vidga, Vildifer and Isung now took leave of King Attila and rode south to Bern and to King Thidrekssaga. King Didrik was very happy to see them and asked them the news. They told him everything that you already know and everything they had accomplished. King Didrik expressed his approval of everything and thanked Vildifer for his expedition. He now became famous throughout the lands for his victory. Vidga was now at home and very unhappy. And Didrik asked Vidga why he was so sorrowful. Vidga answered and said that he could never again be happy until he found out what happened to his sword Mimung. And if I find the man who is bearing that sword, then we will have something to talk over, and I shall certainly lose my life or have Mimung. King Didrik spoke. You shall not speak so much of that. I can tell you who has the sword. He is here among my retainers. Our comrade Heimir has it. He took it immediately after you fell. And so passed several days. And if you want to know more about Heimir's contentiousness, and how having taken the famous sword Mimung turns out, as well as many men falling in battle, and the death of a Jarl, you should tune into the next episode of the Thidrekssaga, here at Sagenheim.